Welcome, everybody. I'm Mark Peter Davis, managing partner of Interplay. I'm on a mission to help entrepreneurs advance society, and this podcast is part of that effort. Today, I am very excited to present to you Lance Neuhauser, the founder and CEO of Wendy. Wendy is an AI-enabled consumer application that really is changing the way kids can kind of engage and consume stories. They can create their own stories, pick the characters, reuse the characters, and we think it's going to be a huge blessing to parents who are really tired of the nighttime story routine. It's going to be a reprieve. Lance is a very special fella. He's had an incredible 20-plus year career, sold several companies, and has now jumped into this business to build something exceptional for kids that's safe, that's creative, and respects IP of its partners. I think this is a very interesting one. For me, it's near and dear to the heart. This comes out of our Foundry at Interplay. Foundry is the side of the house. Some firms refer to them as a studio, where the company is ideated internally, and then Interplay is kind of the nest, where the egg is born and then hatches and then goes out into the world and does its thing. Very, very fortunate to be working with Lance on this company. He has assembled an incredible team and has built something very special. If you haven't already checked out Wendy and you're a parent of young kids, you can find it at trywendy.com. And you'll hear from Lance right now why it's so special. Please enjoy. Lance, thanks for being here, buddy.
Mark, it's my genuine pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Okay, let's jump right in. What is Wendy?
Wendy is a reading entertainment app for kids that we've just released to help kids find reading as entertaining as the other choices that they have in front of them, namely video games, social media, passive video viewing. And it's really critical that they have another choice outside of those, especially in the reading format, because there's this thing called the decline by 9.
What's the decline by 9?
Yeah, we're seeing in 1 year alone, kids reading, especially reading for fun, drops off by 40% between the ages of 8 and 9 and almost never recovers. And this fall off of reading causes kids to experience more anxiety during adolescence, more difficulties in high school, including lower graduation rates, and negative repercussions on career prospects long term. And so the key insight here that we realized in working with early education specialists and working with authors and illustrators and book publishers to create Wendy was that one of the biggest reasons why reading falls off between the ages of 8 and 9 for kids so much is because kids learn how to read and write. That they now know how to choose other options for themselves, how to connect with their friends, how to pick the video game, how to pick the video that they're watching. And so they have started to make other choices. And as we already just said, that choice to not choose reading, at least occasionally, is causing difficulties in kids short-term and long-term.
This sounds a lot like very parallel to the narrative we're all hearing about social media. Is this kids picking up phones at 9 and parents give them their first phone, they get social media and they're off to the races, they're down the dark pit?
So we're finding the stats that video games are up in the mid double digits and social media is up at lower ages. But passive video viewing, YouTube and whatnot, is up over 100% over the last 10 years amongst kids 8 to 9 years old, which just boxes out the amount of time they have to even read. I think each circumstance is different. I don't know if this is necessarily kids doing this on their own because they do reach this age of 8 to 9 to choose their own entertainment, or whether some of the behavior starts earlier as a result of kids getting devices or more acclimated with devices. But it is certainly the numbers are obvious, and the impact is starting to surface more in society as to the problems that occur when kids are not getting outside to play, when they're not reading, and they are just kind of being passive and or becoming addicted to what can be sometimes very problematic forms of entertainment.
So how do you redirect kids now when they have choice and agency, which sounds like they're picking up at this age, back into the reading paradigm through the Wendy app?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mark. In talking to a number of parents, I am a parent, you're a parent, but in talking to a number of parents, one of the things that we realize is at that age, it's very difficult for a parent to just keep reinforcing to a child, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. At some point, the child needs agency. The child needs to choose for themselves. And so that's when we realize that the solution has to be as entertaining. We have to make reading as entertaining of a choice as some of those other options. And so we've built into Wendy the ability for kids to build, like in games, but in Wendy, they're building stories. They're building reusable characters. They're building settings that they, again, can use over and over again and see the byproduct of their work. They could see the effort that they put into it, what ultimately ends up coming out. Like in social media, they want to connect with their friends. We have made it to where these characters, these stories, these settings can be shared to friends so that friends can use each other's characters for new stories, and they can share with one another and thus build some social currency around some of the characters and stories that they love, how it's been done for decades and decades. And then, like passive video viewing, we have brought in the ability for kids to interact with celebrity and athletes and their favorite characters in their building process. So that once again, all those other draws to the other forms of entertainment, we're bringing in some form to make reading that much more entertaining than it ever has been. And it's a combination of what is now modern AI technology with proprietary technology I mentioned was built with authors and illustrators and early education specialists and book publishers to ensure that the technology is built specifically for kids in a safe capacity that has ethically sourced AI so that parents can feel great about putting a form of entertainment in front of their kids that also happens to get them more into the reading habit once again.
There, in the venture landscape, a lot of folks are talking about AI front ends. These are companies where you put a simple interface on top of an AI LLM, ChatGPT or other. There's a bunch of different types of things out there. And there's not a lot of application layer technology. And the implication of it is it's not defensible, right? If you're just kind of putting a skin on some other very complicated product, someone else can show up tomorrow and put the skin on. Now, I know you guys have gone out and built a ton of application layer that's proprietary. And I know you guys have done a bunch of very hard technical things. There are a lot of players in the AI kids book space, most that look a lot like AI front end companies. They just kind of they slap some wallpaper on the wall. How do you think about competitive positioning? Why is Wendy out in the market and different? Why should a consumer be paying attention to it?
So it's a fun topic to talk about because there's an answer that says that at Wendy we should. Let me say it this way. Historically, companies have come into industries and categories and said, because someone is a competitor to me, I will find them as a threat, and I want to go attack them, and I want to defend against what it is they're doing. One of the most rewarding elements of creating Wendy is that in this reading entertainment category, the more we see kids safe, ethically sourced, true proprietary technology. We'll get into the difference between an AI wrapper and proprietary technology in a second, but true proprietary technology that was built with experts to help kids either learn to read or get excited about reading again, or further their quest into reading. The older they get, there is a wave of teenagers that are starting to find customizable stories also very entertaining. So there's this rise of this reading entertainment category coming up. And I feel wonderful about the competition from that sense. If more and more of these companies are moving in to have actually valuable solutions that help a kid reestablish behaviors that are good for them, reduce anxiety, increases their mental strength and fortitude, and in a lot of ways helps them from an emotional standpoint, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. But there is a very real difference between what I'm calling out as a solution, a real solution with all those elements, kid safe, ethically sourced, built with experts, compared to AI wrapped technology. And we, for example, we have technology that has 8 different layers to it, to which the generative AI models is a half of one single layer, right? We needed to build proprietary technology for the reusable components, the ability to reuse characters. Why is that so important? As we talked about, the kids get social currency on the playground from the characters they're into. Yes, the movies they've watched, the stories that they've read. And if everything is just personalized, which most AI wrap technology is, then therefore it isolates the child, preventing the child from actually being able to connect with their friend about what it is they have fallen in love with. We have training data layer. This is us, again, working with illustrators and working with authors. We went out and we had authors actually create hundreds and hundreds of seeds by genre of story type for us, so that these seeds can start off the generation process in a way that is engaging, again, kid safe, allows us to avoid some of the standard AI difficulties, which is convergence of storyline, because it's hard to get a AI naturally to just be creative. So, and we want to avoid what has been taking place in the market, which is effectively taking other people's work and not giving them remuneration for that. So we went out and we commissioned authors to give us this data layer, and we did the same thing for illustrators. You cannot in Wendy get anybody else's IP through our platform unless we have reached a partnership and written consent to do so. So we have commissioned illustrators to actually create hundreds of images for us so that we have our own styles by which we can actually illustrate a story. And it goes on. We have an analytics suite so that we can understand what actually is most beloved by a kid. My daughter happens to love creating mind-reading ninja baby stories. Who would have thought? But it allows us to, but it allows us to bring more content to her if that's going to get her to continue to read. We've got a consumption layer that is not just read at your own tempo on your own accord for those who have already learned how to read, but we've got follow along narration, and we have audiobook. And yes, then there is advanced technology like a multi-agent system that actually allows us to have an editor, allows us to have a reading compliance officer so that we can actually have the stories for a kid tuned to their age and to their reading level. So hopefully you're hearing that, one, if there are other solutions that are doing kid-safe, ethically sourced development for kids, please come into the market. This is good. Let's all be the tide to raise the boats for kids. But if there is just technology that is just trying to wrap AI, that is not taking into consideration the needs for kids, that is not taking into consideration safety, that is not taking and putting proprietary technology at work in order to ensure the things that are most important for kids and parents actually come into reality, then yes, I would consider them competition, and we are out to know that folks out there, kids and parents, know about Wendy and come to our application.
Right. It's very mission driven, what I'm hearing.
That's a great way to summarize probably what I said in 5,000 words.
Lance, what was your career leading up to this point? You're in an interesting role, there's not a lot of natural trajectory to the AI landscape because it's new. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of natural trajectory to this particular medium and business backgrounds. Just a lot of things intersecting here that are unusual. How'd you get here?
It's a good question. I actually remember a year ago, I actually think it might have been in a conversation with you where I felt like me and the team that we've put together on this one, which is a reunited team that has worked together before, which makes it even that much more special of an experience. I felt like we were somehow uniquely qualified to end up in this very strange confluence of necessities to build this product. So, not to go back too far, but it is an important note. I came out of school right at the turn of the century, the turn of the millennium, and there was the dot-com era. And I go back that far because I worked in 5 companies in 8 different roles. I only changed jobs once back then. It was mergers, bankruptcies, acquisitions. So anyone who's experienced that can tell you that you can either be befuddled by the untethered nature of that, or you can begin to realize that with each change comes opportunity, especially if we're going to self-study and adapt and adopt to our circumstances so that we can continue to add value, not just to the company, but to ourselves and to those that rely upon us most. And one of the things that I learned during that phase, and I wish I can claim foresight, but it was really more happenstance, was that I learned what information is captured and what data is transferred through digital communication. And little did I know at that time how foundational that would be to my career. And myself and 3 others ended up stumbling into search engine marketing. We started a company called Resolution Media, which came to be the largest search engine marketing agency on the planet. We sold that to Omnicom. I got plucked out of Resolution Media to run digital for one of their large brand agencies, where I took a team of 40 to 100 and 100 million in billings to over $1 billion in billings in 18 months. Again, I would love to claim that it was just some magical management. Maybe I had some small part of it, but it was a lot of right place, right time. And then saw, I think, again, a little bit early, that social was on the rise. And I ended up partnering with a former head of computer science and engineering at Northwestern University. And we saw that social data would forever change marketing and communications. And even more broadly than that, that social data was the largest set of readily available anthropological information that the world had ever seen at that point. And that gives us the ability to really learn and understand how to communicate at a much deeper and richer level. So, hopefully you start to hear that I'm all about understanding how to communicate, how to use that data into tools that could empower people to be more effective. And in that company around social data, we started 4C, which became the largest self-service social ad tech on the planet. We sold that to Vista. They put us into their portfolio company, MediaOcean. I became president of MediaOcean, helped MediaOcean sell from Vista to CVC. And at that point said, wow, that was a nice 20 plus year run. And it's time to take a step back. And here I was, now it's 2022, and I decide I've learned a lot. To quote Arthur Brooks, the author, I was kind of moving hopefully from strength to strength, and I was starting to move from what was rapid fire fluid intelligence to more long form crystallized intelligence, and trying to be more of an advisor, a CEO coach, which I was doing both those things and enjoying it very much. And then I met you, Mark, and that's when things got crazy. You're like, hey man, like we've got this great company and we got this foundry, and I want you to be an operating partner in this foundry where, so you don't have to start new companies. You can start them inside the foundry, and you can help be an advisor to them and help them get up to speed. And so here I am thinking, this is amazing. So I could be at arm's length from all these companies and see how all these executives work and see all these different challenges, but almost act like an uncle instead of a parent, where all of a sudden you play with the baby and then you give them back when they start crying. Here I get to do this with all these companies. I get to be like, hey, this is going to be great. I think you should go in this direction, but it's really on you, CEO, to do this. And so then we're in a conversation. Fast forward. So you're like, come do this. And so now we're in a conversation. It's February of 23. So February of last year. And Gen AI is going bananas, and you and I scheduled just a brainstorming session on what do we want to do in the space. Everyone's creating ideas in the Gen AI space. What do we want to do? And it wasn't long into our conversation before the idea of AI children's stories was put on the table, and you and I just started riffing on it. And you hear this from a lot of entrepreneurs, like, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I walked away from that session and I couldn't stop thinking about it. But I couldn't stop thinking about it for a different reason. I couldn't stop thinking about it because of how problematic the idea was. See, I have a family history with children's stories. And this might be the rounded out component, because what Wendy actually is self-service technology that we built with 4C. What Wendy is ultimately media for kids. And I've been in the media business for 20 some odd years. What it is data-driven recommendations for children. And I was doing that with data-driven recommendations for content when we built 4C and got into the television space as well, and had a front row seat in seeing what Netflix ultimately did to the television world by having more information at their fingertips, providing a better experience for the user and better bottom line business results. And all of a sudden, there's this family history of children's stories where my cousin, Shel Silverstein, famed author, I was not close with him. I only met him at his mother's funeral, my aunt's funeral, but I was close with his mother. And she was the one who encouraged me into creating children's stories and reading children's stories and not being afraid to doodle and create ever since I was a little kid. And my mom was in the children's story business, not production side, but retail side for over 20 years. And so you combine all this modern technology that's coming to potentially eat the lunch of authors and illustrators and give them no business model and not give parents assurance that what they're putting in front of their kids is safe, and not giving kids, while giving kids, yes, some personalization and ability to see representation, which is amazing, but not giving them the ability to connect with their friends, which is so important, especially at that age, to understand how to have empathy and some emotional intelligence and how to develop that. And here was this idea that was going to go down this path that was going to potentially take away a lot of what was so beautiful about children's stories. And that's when it was time to bring together some of the old team, lead engineer, head of ops, partnerships, et cetera, and say, guys, can we create a solution that takes the best of what is coming from technology, which is wonderful, but can we also bring to bear what is already beloved and fantastic about children's stories, the inventiveness, the imagination, the sharing, the entertainment. And that's when Wendy was built. One more point on this. We had this guy, Mike Mosseri, who's wonderful here in Chicago. He is at Lightbank VC, and he calls me up right around the same time I was engaging with you, Mark, and he goes, "Hey, if you're ever ready to start a company again, give me a call. We'd love to back you." I looked him dead in the eye. I said, "Mike, I am not starting another company. It's not happening." 1 year later, and I blame you in part, I'm calling Mike up and I'm like, "Hey, Mike, guess what? I started a company." And thankfully, Mike and Lightbank jumped in. Yeah, he knew. Only be an uncle so much once you have a kid of your own. It's beautiful being an uncle, and I love those relationships, but there is something special about your own kids.
So people can find the app now. It's on the App Store, right? TryWendy.com.
TryWendy.com. That's right. Search the Wendy app, and you will be able to find Wendy.
How can the community help? Anyone listening to this? A lot of entrepreneurs, parents, I'm sure. What do you need? You're on a journey. I know you're building a company, but the best companies are solving a social need, even if they're for profit, right? There's a social need here. How can folks help?
So there's a few ways to help. First and foremost, check it out. Use the app. Use it with your kids. And I'm going to make an ask that almost seems crazy of someone in my position, because just to get someone to use an app once is hard enough. I'm going to ask people to use the app 3 times, which is crazy. But let me tell you why I'm going to ask people to use it. You're going to see a very rich choice-based experience to creating a story for kids. It's critical to understand why we went choice-based, so that it does not give children direct windows and access into the AI, which can be very unsafe. It allows us to know exactly what's going in and what's coming out, so that we can provide better content for kids. So this choice-based experience is pretty rich. It can be as deep as someone wants to go in creating a story. And so the first time someone comes in to create, they're like, I've never done anything like this before. Like, you remember when all of a sudden the App Store came? I remember using Shazam for the first time, being like, wow, this is amazing. I've never done anything like this before. And it's kind of this overwhelming, like, this is amazingly new. And so people come in and they're like, wow, this is new, and they're wowed by the new factor. Hopefully people feel that way. The second time someone uses it, it's like, I know I'm going through choices. So I'm going to look at the choices a little bit more. And they create another story. But the third time, kids especially have a tendency to come and be like, here's what I want to do. I want to create a story about two ninjas that are really old in an alien world. And I want it to be about resilience. And I want these two ninjas to have a special power. And I want it to be an energizing story. And then they come in and they actually just use the app to get the story that was already in their mind's eye. That click has a tendency to happen at that third time using the app. So all of a sudden these kids start to think about Wendy as a tool to translate their imagination into a story they want to read. And that's when the magic really does happen. And if that happens for you, please let us know. If there are other choices you want to make, submit them, right? If you're all of a sudden saying, I want this as a choice in the flow, certainly let us know. And then if you do like it, make sure your kid is sharing their creations, not just with you, but their aunts and their uncles and their cousins, so that they can feel the reward and the satisfaction that happens when you put the art on the refrigerator. It's the same feeling. It's the same.
Lance, thank you for your passion and effort on this.
Thank you for helping set us in motion, Mark.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
Huge thanks to Lance for everything he's doing. He's a special person, the right person to be running this. I think the combination of EQ and awareness is so important for building a product that's going to likely influence so many kids. So I think there's a social service in his work in this. Anyway, if you're interested, if you're a parent, you have nieces, nephews, check out trywendy.com. We're really excited about it. I think it's an exceptional product. Their V1 is ridiculous to me. Their V1 looks like a typical V10. It's crazy. So enjoy. And if you have comments, feedback, please let us know. Lance and the team, they're trying to build something incredible, and it takes a community, it takes a village. Thanks for listening.